Hello and welcome to Fix It, the podcast by the Fix Media, where we unpack media insights and take you behind the scenes of editorial decisions, strategy, and innovation. I'm your host Anton Protsiuk, senior editor of the Fix Media. Before we dive in, please subscribe, follow, and if you like what you hear, support us at thefix.media. In today's episode, we are talking about something every newsroom struggles with, but very few discuss openly, which is how to hire, manage, and grow people in a way that works. My guest is Daryna Shevchenko, CEO of the Kyiv Independent. She has overseen the Kyiv Independent as it grew from a sort of emergency startup launched 4 years ago to Ukraine's most important English language voice. The Kyiv Independent story is interesting in its own right, but we will spend most of this conversation discussing hiring and managing talent in media organizations. Daryna will share a lot of lessons that can be useful to conventional publishers, of course, but she also brings the added experience of running a media organization during a full-scale war, so I'm sure that we can also learn a thing or two about crisis management as well. Daryna, welcome to the Fixes podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with a quick lightning round. What's your favorite job interview question?
Okay, so my favorite question is I called it a communication question, but I basically set up a situation for an interviewee where I tell them that they have to convince me out of a bad decision I'm making. And they have to tell me how they're going to do that. How are they going to convince the CEO of a company to not make a certain decision?
That's a great idea. What's one great hiring decision you've made in your career?
I think it's bringing on board our CEO and my number two.
What's a common hiring mistake that you will never repeat?
Never blindly believe a glorious recommendation, even if it's from like a person you really trust.
What's the most underrated trait in journalists and media people?
Curiosity, I think.
That makes sense. And what's the hardest role in a media organization to hire for?
Oh, editor. Like, no competition for that one.
Definitely. Great. So before we dive into the questions of hiring and management, let's just set up the Kyiv Independent for our listeners who might not know it that well. Can you talk about the Kyiv Independent broadly and give us a sense of your scale? How big is your team? How big is your audience?
So the Kyiv Independent is Ukraine's largest and most influential English language publication, and we've been launched in November 2021, just 3 months before this full-scale invasion. And we had to start from scratch without having any startup funding at the moment. We only had a team willing to move on with this new idea. The editorial team that was fired from the Kyiv Post by its owner. The Kyiv Post was the previous English language voice in Ukraine that is still kind of existing now in its sort of zombie version. So we started, and then in 3 months, the full scale invasion started, and we soon became the voice of Ukraine. Now, the Kyiv Independent, when we started, we were 18 people, and now we are 80 people, actually more than 80 people. Our readership grew from just a couple dozen thousand a month to millions a month. I think our record viewership is like 50 million views or something like that, but on average, I think it's around 5. We're present across different social media platforms. We have 23,500 paying members, and we're actually campaigning right now to get to 25,000 paying members. So if you want to become a paying member of the Kyiv Independent, it's a very right time to join. Our business model is basically reader revenue. So 70% of our revenue comes from membership and donations from our readers. And then the rest is basically private donations, commercial sales, book publishing, merch, well, e-store, syndication, yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Maybe by the time this episode comes out, you will have already reached your goal of 25,000 members.
Well, we are not going to stop, so you can still sign up.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Everyone can still support the Kyiv Independent, but you've mentioned that you grew to 80 people. Can you talk about some of the biggest hiring and management decisions you made early on that enabled you to grow to this scale?
I can't say that there were like decisions that enabled us to grow. I think we had to grow because the environment was such that we had to, like, there was a huge need for our reporting, and we had to fulfill that need, and we needed new people, and so we had to grow. The question now is like how we were growing. So in the beginning, we basically just needed hands. We just needed people to do things, like any people who could do any things. So we would hire like people for very generic positions like project manager, and then we would figure out like what is there for them to do in the team that was quite small, with a lot of things to do. And now I think we are looking for professionals with very specific skills, sometimes very narrow skills, and I think that has generally changed in our hiring strategies throughout the years.
I want to talk a bit more about your hiring approach a bit later on, but just to set up for our listeners about your role as the chief executive officer of an organization, can you talk a bit more about what it is that you personally do, and maybe how just your typical work week look like, if there is even such a thing as a typical work week for you?
It changed a lot. I think now, when we are in our year 5 actually, and at 80 plus people, I can finally say that I kind of have a CEO job. When you are a CEO of a like 18 people organization, you're not really a CEO. You're doing things with your hands a lot. You're not like strategically focused. I remember in November 2021 sitting on the floor in our first office and looking through like the contacts of advertisers from the batch of the old newspapers, and waiting for people to connect the office to the internet. So like that was my CEO job kind of back then in November and December 2021. Now it's different, of course. I would say that now like around 30% of my time goes to admin and HR, and then around another 30% is probably strategic and operational kind of decision making and planning, and then the rest is frankly stakeholder management on different levels. So yeah, that's kind of it. How the week looks like. So I have a lot of meetings. Um, I I think I would say I spend like 70% of my time in the meetings, where I usually either reviewing something or making decisions or helping making decisions. And then the rest of the time I basically have for creativity and strategic planning, which I hope will be more in the future.
And are there any specific resources in the broad sense of this word that have helped you rise to the occasion and grow you personally from a person who is managing a small organization to a person who is leading a larger one?
I think it's not the resources. I'm not sure what you mean by resources.
I mean, it can be anything from books to people to approaches to ideas to podcast, anything that might have helped you.
I think one like big change that happened to me back in May 2022 was when I just realized on my own, frankly, that I am not so I'm a crisis manager. I have a lot of experience in crisis managing. I've crisis managed organizations out of deep shit. And that's kind of what I do. So when I joined the Kyiv Independent, it wasn't crisis. It was like 18 people, no money, like we want to do something, help us, right? So that's what I did. But then when when the big war started, our fundraising picked up, our crowdfunding picked up, our membership picked up, and we actually had money. And somewhere in May 2022 or June, I think I realized that I'm still managing this organization as if it's dying, as if it's in deep crisis, but it's not. Like it actually needs to grow. And I think I woke up one day, I was like, I'm changing everything. I'm doing everything differently. Um, yeah, I think that was the biggest change. And then from then on, yes, you have to learn like all the time. I think the big game changer for me was I was a Salzburger Fellow at Columbia University this winter, and I think that program kind of changed a lot how I viewed things. But generally, I think you have to be consuming knowledge and like insight from everywhere all the time. Um, if you can't do that, and I, for example, personally struggle with that because I tend to be very operationally kind of involved. And if you are very operational involved, you might not have like time or mental capacity to consume knowledge. Then you have to make sure that you have like this kind of study breaks, like a program here, a program there, where you would go and look at things differently from a different angle, from a different perspective, meet different people, like widen your network, whatever, just to ensure that you stay open-minded. I think that is what's very much needed to grow yourself as a professional, but also to grow the organization.
So let's talk about hiring and let's dive right into the weeds of the hiring process. Can you just walk us through the hiring process as it is built in within the Kyiv Independent? So who is involved, what stages you include, what you are trying to do at every step, and so on.
Okay, so let's first confess that the hiring process at the Kyiv Independent is not perfect. I think we could do much, much better. We just hired our first full-time HR manager, so we do expect our hiring, onboarding, offboarding, and all of that to enhance sometime soon. But so what we usually do is we start with identifying the hiring need, like either a gap in operations we need to fill or like a change we need to make, and then from that we basically start designing a position. It can be, and designing a position doesn't just include like the responsibilities of a person, but also like what's the team this person will be joining, who will be their direct supervisor, who will this person be talking to, cooperating with closely in the team, like their potential OKRs and deliverables we expect them to bring, and all this kind of stuff. um, I think after that we kind of move on to design, to kind of identifying the hiring opportunities, and it as well can be different depending like case by case. Sometimes it's just very kind of linear, so like we posted on this and this platforms to advertise and promote. Sometimes we kind of know someone who fits this and we just headhunt that like specific person to join us, and sometimes we do both. um, and sometimes we also hire recruiters to help us. So after we kind of identify the hiring opportunities, we start promoting and headhunting. And from that moment, there are several stages that it goes through. So it's first, there are like resume screenings, CV screenings that are usually done by the HR recruiters or like our office manager. Then there is like a preview interview by a recruiter and HR. And then there is a first round of the interview, usually done by the direct supervisor. Then there is a test assignment, if any, if like it's needed for the position. And then the final stage is usually like a supervisor, the direct supervisor. Usually that would be myself, Zahar, or Olga. who are kind of doing the final round of the interview, which we kind of call vibe check. So I wouldn't usually, so for example, if I'm doing it for like an accountant, I wouldn't ask like specific professional skill oriented questions. I would mostly be like, what do you think is the mission of the Kyiv Independent? Like, trying to figure out, is like the soft skill set enough? Is, are there any like red flags? What's the attitude?
Are there a lot of people that fail this last vibe check interview?
Some fail. I mean, I have to say some fail, but at the end of the day, if they're like, so I mean, it's the vibe check is not for me to like the person. Like the vibe check is for me to make sure that this person would vibe with the company culture. And if I personally do not like the person, but like I just don't like them, like I'm a real person, I can't like everybody. But the direct supervisor is telling me I like them, like I click with them, and I think they would do the job. I would like give in. If I don't have any red flags, like somebody is like, "Hey, I'm a fan of Russia," I don't know. Then I would be probably doing that. But otherwise,
Are there any big notable differences between hiring for a newsroom job and a non-newsroom media management kind of job?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. Like I think the same key things are important in both, and there are differences. There are technical differences, probably like schedule wise, availability wise, stress resilience wise, and stuff like that. But generally, I think the key things are.
So recently you've made this big change of hiring your first full-time HR manager. Are there any other changes or things you have learned along the way that you implemented recently that have helped you improve your hiring process?
Recently, we just had her for like 2 weeks, so not yet. Yeah, not yet. But I think one thing that we did change in the last year, before we even hired our HR, is we started working with the recruiters. Like, if somebody asked me what would be your one advice on hiring, I would say work with the recruiters. It is a separate job, and no, you can't do it as well as they do. And yeah, it saves a lot of time and effort. And they do know the market better, and they do work cross industry, something that we can't probably do. So yeah, that thing like helped our hiring a lot, and I think thanks to that we got a lot of great talent.
And you have been working with external recruiters, right? Not on staff.
We hired several companies on different, like for different vacancies we had to close, and yes, some of them were more successful, some were less successful, but overall it was a very positive experience.
So you gave this one piece of advice, just work with recruiters. Are there any other hiring tips and tricks that you have learned and can share with our listeners?
Other tips and tricks. So I think use the trial period if possible. Trial period is a great way to test each other. I think there's only that much you can learn about the person during like a call or like a 1 hour meeting. And most of the things will come up during the trial period, and the trial period is like is a safe space for you to meet new people and see how they work with you and the team, but also for them to see if like that's the right place for them, and like can create this nice smooth exit for both of you. So I would say do that. I think it is important that you click with the hire as a like person if you have to work with them directly. Okay, because if you don't and you like just irritated by this person, like, or I don't know, triggered somehow, that won't work. Even if they have all the skill in the world you need, but if you don't click, that won't work. So I would say don't fight your instincts and like do try to find a person you click with. Um, I would say that probably kind of cultural fit is as important as a skill fit, meaning like the attitude and the mission, like people have to share the attitude and the mission to work. Uh, Even if they have the right skill, but they do not share your mission or like don't care about it, or like they have the attitude that is not shared by most in the company, that might just fail them and you. And what I mean by that is like simple things like, I don't know, they just want to work 9 to 6, and everybody's like driven by a mission and a goal and stuff like that. And them wanting to work from 9 to 6 doesn't make them bad people, but they just are not a fit. Like they would struggle in this environment. People would just not like them for that, just because they are very different. They're out of this, out of place here.
And I do wanted to ask about how do you define company culture? Is it something that you just have an innate understanding of, or is there anything, or could there be anything written down about that? Any internal document that could define it at this stage?
I think depending on this, like on a stage of the company's development, it can be different. Like on the early stages, you would probably not have had time yet to write it down, but we already have a company culture deck. I don't think we refer to it enough, frankly, but we do have it written down at some point. We did write it down. I did write it down, and we talked about it in several meetings. So I think that is basically, yeah. I think the more explicit it is, the better. Like explicit culture is always stronger. So yeah, I would say have it explicit.
Like in the episode, sounds like we're a great match, and we couldn't be happier. If you'd like to strengthen our bond, support us by donating or joining our membership program. That's it. No more interruptions. Back to the episode.
So I want to talk about a very fun topic, which is firing people. It is often as important as hiring, right? And is discussed even less publicly. So I did want to ask a couple of questions about that. A common problem is just for a manager, for a leader to wait too long before letting someone go. So I wanted to ask you, how do you personally know when it's time to accept that a hire isn't working out?
I'm very bad at it. Like I that's my biggest problem in the whole HR management. I would wait for too long. Um, and how I would know it was too late, like it is too long. I know like a person, I come in the room and I see the person like flinch at my side, and I know like I waited too long. I've tortured them, I've tortured myself, I tortured the team, like I had to let them go a long time ago. And I think that is kind of the lesson. Like sometimes when you think of firing, you think of firing as like a bad thing you would do to a person. But sometimes it's actually a good thing. It's a kind thing to do to a person. Like, letting them go and like helping them with this reality check and helping them open to new opportunities, to finding places where they can actually fit is like a kind thing to do. Also, like when you're not firing someone who is not delivering, like the workload they had to do is falling on other people, and this is also unkind, like to other employees. So how I notice, I think for me the marker is when I like realize I lose trust in this person's decisions or opinions, uh, in small things. Like a person is telling me, "Hey, I am feeling bad today. Can I skip?" And I'm thinking like, are you really feeling bad? And that's my clue. Like that's my clue that I don't trust them anymore, because I'm not a monster. First of all, like I believe that people can feel sick and need to skip work, but also I kind of an empathetic person. So like if a person is telling me they feel bad, I kind of believe them. But if I don't, like that's my clue. And Also, if a person is telling me, hey, I'll handle that, and I'm like, no, I'll have to oversee. I'm not a micromanager. If I don't trust a person to write an email or like take a call or something without me, then it's time to let them go and to part ways. Yeah, that's my goal. But also, like, if I have this anxious anticipation of the meeting with this person, that's also my goal. Like, I want to feel good when going into the meeting with an employee, partner, whoever. If I'm not feeling good, that's my goal. Same is if somebody I really trust in the team tells me like I don't feel good about this person, I might also get suspicious and start looking closely whether that is the right person to be here.
So obviously there are cases of a person failing to go through the trial period. This is more obvious, but if we talk about people who have been working within an organization for a long time, does it happen often that you need to let someone go? And if so, what are the most common reasons a person stops performing as well as they used to?
It's an interesting question. I can't say it happens often because we're just 4 years old, but it did happen a few times that we had to let go people who have been with us for like over a year or so. I think the most common thing is the people weren't growing fast enough for the organization. So they started well and they were growing, but then the organization basically outgrew them, if you can say that. So the organization was growing faster and they just wouldn't catch up. So I think that happened like 2 or 3 times at least. And the other reason would be uh, people were just not. So the pressure also grows. As we grow, the pressure grows, the tempo grows, like it becomes faster and like there's more demand. And some people just wouldn't like that pressure growing. So they just didn't want to take the pressure. And they would either slack, like basically they would, not do the job, and yeah, the attitude would change to worse. So the organization would stay the same, like the same attitude, and their attitude they like weren't able to take it anymore. Sometimes they leave themselves and they're like, I don't want this. I want a different industry, calmer one. Which I understand. Definitely don't judge for. But sometimes they don't even recognize that themselves, so they kind of stay in the job, but they become this burden, if you can say that, and that's when we have to let them go.
And when it comes to letting go employees who have been working with you for some time, how do you handle this process just logistics wise? What are the steps from you first noticing that you are losing trust, for example, in this person to the actual decision of them being let go?
I think the clue to everything here is like feedback and the regularity of feedback. So we have the culture of regular feedbacks, as regular as we can get them at least. So every employee has to get feedback at least once a month from their direct supervisor. And like if for 3 cycles, like for 3 months, the employee is getting negative feedback, the question should be raised whether that employee is staying with us or leaving us. It doesn't mean they will be fired like on the fourth feedback cycle. But there might be like an extra review or like an extra trial for them, or like specific OKRs set for them over a period of time to improve their performance. And then basically if that doesn't work, but that at that stage is communicated very clearly. It's like communicated like, hey, so this is not working. We appreciate your input. You've been with us for a very long time. We want you to thrive here, and we do feel like you're a part of the team, and here's what we think you can do to improve. And if they agree with the plan, we can give them more time to improve. And if they do improve, that's great. We move on from that. If they don't improve, we just let them go. And at that point, it's kind of very smooth. So everybody understands that it's, that's that, like it came to that. I'm a big believer that the whole kind of firing conversation should be a kind of kind and professional process where it's not about you as a person, it's about you being a match or not a match to the company. And it happens just as like in people, sometimes you marry a person and you feel like, oh, this is the love of my life, and then you're like divorcing them. It happens. You kind of outgrow the environment, outgrow a person, outgrow a team. You outgrow a team, or the team outgrows you. It's just life, right? So it doesn't have to get ugly and personal. It needs to be kind of professional.
So let's talk about mentoring and developing people. And the first point I wanted to discuss is just onboarding, which is obviously important for a person to be successful in their role. But sometimes there is especially at early stages, there is little time and little process for onboarding. But I'm sure you've improved this processes as you grew as the organization. So I wanted to ask you to walk us through your approach to onboarding. uh, just how you think about the employees first month or first couple of months.
Yeah, so basically the first one is admin onboarding. It's basically starts before the person like shows up to work. So once they uh, got an offer and they accepted an offer, our HR manager, it used to be our office manager, reaches out to them and says like, hey, I need this and this from you to like draft a contract for you, blah blah blah. They send them like different basic information. They set up their email, and so on and so forth. And then they showed up to work. They show up to work on their day one, and they have like a lengthiest onboarding meeting with the onboarding manager, usually HR manager or like the office manager, and that includes like a lot of things. So that includes like they might have like several of these throughout the day, so it may include like the tour around the office, like and where the coffees and like from the basic stuff like that. And then it also includes the presentation of different channels of communication, of different like storage spaces online, like where to find certain things. And then it moves into like how to manage your um, say days off and what is the system we use, like introduction to this technical. So this is kind of a technical onboarding process. And then there is basically there's a cultural onboarding process, whereas like their onboarding manager is like telling them who is who in the team and like what's the best way to connect with people, and like who's responsible for what and how people react to this or that, and what are like the main meetings they have to be at, and stuff like that. And then there is like a job onboarding, which is done by the direct supervisor. So the direct supervisor basically kind of outlines their zone of responsibility and the key things they need to deliver on in the next 2 months. The 2 months is usually the months of the trial period we have. They set up bi-weekly feedback sessions with the new employee. So for the trial period, we have bi-weekly feedback, unless they need it more often. We are also open to that. Yeah, we usually have for the first week, we might also have like daily check-ins and check-outs, like to see if this person is, doing fine. Like we sometimes call them vibe checks to see like how are you doing? Are you feeling great? Not great? Like what's up with that? And yeah, like that's basically how. I hope. So what worries me now in our wandering process that it kind of fades away after week two. So after week two, it's like you're on your own, and I want that to be more structured up until like the end of the month, the first month at least. So that's my basically hope for our new HR manager to structure that and to give it more weight.
Yes, and from this more technical question of onboarding, I wanted to switch to just more broadly mentorship and development. How do you approach mentoring and developing younger, more junior people in your organization? Are there any specific approaches or any specific tips you have learned along the way on how to mentor people?
So for the context, in general, there are a lot of young people in our organization. We are generally a very, very young team. So I think our average age is like 30, and that means just a few people like myself are just bringing it up. Most of the median is like much smaller. So like I think the median is like maybe 25. I don't know. Like it's a lot of young people. Uh, on one hand, we love that because it's a lot of young ambition, it's a lot of energy, So it's also a lot of like effort you have to make mentoring and developing people. Um, I don't think we have a structured approach to like how we do that, but it naturally is part of like every manager's job at our company. So for me myself, it looks like I have to be able to identify the talent, and for me, identifying the talent means I have to see like the right attitude, the right skill set, and the ability to learn fast on the job. Um, yeah, and ambition and connection to the mission. Once I see that, I'm kind of happy to invest time and effort in mentoring that person. I usually don't do that very structurally, so I would hope our HR would help us with that, me personally. But um, so what I can do is I would share more of the context of what I do and how and why. I might set up like separate kind of mentorship calls. I would spend more time on like feedbacks and like kind of learning loops with that person. Once I see growth and any efforts kind of bringing fruit, I would probably try and identify new opportunities for this person. Um, and I would push them to grow faster, to grow into like a new opportunity. Uh, there, I would say I would need help because I tend to push people faster than they need to be pushed. So I've unfortunately been in a couple of situations where I've pushed somebody to into like a job or a responsibility they weren't really ready yet for. So yeah, not a perfect system, but that's basically what I would do. We also like in terms of like general staff development, we have a kind of a training program. So we have a couple benefits we offer the team. So we have bi-weekly trainings where one of the staff members, either presents some work project they did and as a learning opportunity, or talk about something like everybody or like a lot of people would need to be successful at their job. Like for example, our finance manager did a great workshop on like contracting and preparing contracts and like the basics of the legal work. So that was very interesting. But sometimes we also do like people who have interesting hobbies do like workshops on like their hobbies. So it's kind of entertainment slash development. um, we also have we're also open to like fund like partially fund learning opportunities for the people if like they see like a course they need or like a book, a presentation, a conference they want to go and they would need that for the job. We would be open to fund at least 50% of the endeavor for them. So yeah, we kind of like for myself, for example, Salzburger program, I did get a scholarship for the program from Columbia University, but at the same time, my company covered like my uh, stay in New York and like the flights and stuff like that. So we kind of try to be proactive in helping people to develop and grow. But I think I hope we'll have more than that in the future.
And one last final topic I want to discuss. You're not just running a fast growing media startup, but you're doing it in a country that is fighting a full scale invasion, which obviously creates a lot of additional challenges, hurdles, difficulties. Uh, can you talk us? Can you talk about how it impacts your management style, your management decisions, and how do you help the team ensure it isn't burnt out when they are covering?
Um, so I think generally and theoretically, like the burnout and like the level of like tiredness is a responsibility of a person. Like it can't be a responsibility of a third party, whether that's a manager, like a company, a mom, dad, husband, wife, whatever. Like if you are tired or you feel like you're getting burned out, you have to identify the problem yourself, and you have to make steps to um, like reduce the damage. Being the manager for like the almost direct manager for like half the like 40 people, and then like being sort of a manager for a bigger team, I couldn't possibly like identify the problem in time to be able to help for like all of these people. It's not possible for me, so I would need a lot of proactive direct communication from them to be able to help them somehow. But I think there are things that a company can do to make sure that the work environment they're creating isn't like, stimulating burnout. And I think there are, these things, when I talk about them, these things are pretty basic. Like everybody can do them. It's just, I think not a lot of people realize how important they are for like people's mental stability. For example, financial stability. Like try and pay salaries kind of the same time every month. That ensures that people can feel that they're financially protected and stable. They do know when to expect an incoming transfer. And they can plan their finances, and they can plan their life accordingly, and that is like super important. uh, but it's a very basic stuff, like nobody even thinks about it. Make sure that the working environment, like the office basically, is well equipped and like, I don't know, warm, comfortable, not too noisy, um, accessible. Like it's located not at the end in the end of the world, and it's like people can get to during the blackouts. Like it has generators, so if people have blackouts at home, they can, easily come to the office and like see the light and charge their phones and work from there. So you would think it's something basic, but it's also an important thing that kind of stabilizes you mentally. Um, what else is there? Like, I think the team atmosphere, kind of. So like, you know, try and make sure that it's friendly, it's kind, we're kind to each other. We don't have like toxic environment, that there is clarity about what's expected of people, uh, when it is expected of people, there are clear goals. So like just having clarity at work also adds to your stability, so you're not guessing, and your work goals do not depend on your like supervisor's mood swing. It's clear, like we need to do that, and like, that is clear. um Regular feedback is like one of the probably key things. Like you have to have regular feedback, and that's basically all you need to know about the burnout. But we also have like apart from all these things, we also have a mental support program, which I personally believe is not a must. It's not something we must do, but it's something that we can do and we will do because we can afford it. So in our case, it includes some awareness training about like, you know, uh, mental support you can get and should get, and mental care for yourself, and but also it has we from time to time we do retreats for the team, so also to boost teamwork, but also to just rest and breathe out for a couple of days in Carpathian Mountains. And we also have been funding personal therapy for the team. So some people who didn't have personal therapists would be able to get a personal therapist through our mental support program and our partners, and some would just get funding for their personal therapy. So I think, I've had a lot of positive feedback about this program from the staff. So I think that's one also very helpful.
This is great. Thank you a lot for sharing your experience. I'm sure that it will help a lot of people improve their processes as well. And thank you for joining our
Thank
podcast.
you for having me. I'm very excited to hear what comes out of it.
That's all for today. Thank you for being with us. Follow The Fix, subscribe to The Fixed podcast, and if you want to help us grow, please head over to thefix.media and join our membership family.